Once upon a time, in the year of 1983, there was a group of friends named Tim, Lisa, John, and Sarah. They were all in their late teens, and loved to explore the abandoned places in their small town. One day, they heard about an old, run-down house on the outskirts of the town that was said to be haunted. Being the thrill-seekers that they were, they decided to investigate. As they approached the house, they couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The house looked eerie, with boarded-up windows and overgrown weeds. But they were determined to go through with their plan. They pried open a window and climbed inside. The inside of the house was even more decrepit than the outside. Cobwebs covered the walls, and the furniture was covered in a thick layer of dust. But as they explored, they began to notice strange occurrences. They would hear strange noises, and sometimes they would catch a glimpse of something moving out of the corner of their eye. They shrugged it off as their imagination and continued to explore. But then, the real horror began. They stumbled upon an old diary in the attic. As they read through it, they discovered that the house had once been home to a family who had been brutally murdered by an unknown assailant. And as they read further, they realized that the killings had occurred in the very year they were in, 1983. Suddenly, they began to feel a sense of dread wash over them. They had unknowingly trespassed on the site of a recent murder. They tried to leave, but they found the door was locked and the windows wouldn't budge. They were trapped. That's when they began to see the ghostly apparitions of the murdered family. The ghostly figures of the parents and their children appeared in front of them, their faces twisted in agony and terror. The group knew they had to get out, but the spirits of the murdered family seemed determined to keep them trapped forever. The group knew they had to get out, but the spirits of the murdered family seemed determined to keep them trapped forever. They were frantically searching for a way out when they heard the sound of sirens outside. They thought the police had come to their rescue, but when they looked out the window, they saw something even more terrifying. The sirens were coming from a hearse, and the vehicle was parked directly in front of the house. They soon realized that the spirits of the murdered family had summoned the hearse as an ominous sign. Suddenly, the door to the room they were in slammed shut, and they were plunged into darkness. They heard the sound of ghostly laughter and whispering. They were terrified, realizing that the spirits of the murdered family had no intention of letting them leave alive. They were trapped inside the house, with no way out, and no one to save them. They knew that they were going to die, and that the spirits of the murdered family would claim them as their next victims. The group was horrified. They knew they had to escape the house. The group managed to escape the house, but only just. They barely made it out alive, and were forever changed by the terrifying experience. They never spoke of the ghostly encounter again, but they knew that the spirits of the murdered family and the murderer still haunted that old house. The group was horrified and knew that they had to get rid of the spirits of the murdered family and the murderer haunting the house. They remembered reading about a powerful exorcism ritual that could banish the spirits for good. But it required a powerful spiritual leader to perform the ritual, someone who was well-versed in the ways of the occult. They searched for weeks, but could not find anyone who was willing to help them. They were about to give up hope when they stumbled upon an old priest who specialized in exorcisms. They told him their story, and he agreed to help them. The group returned to the house with the priest, and he began the exorcism ritual. He recited ancient prayers and incantations, and the spirits began to grow agitated. They could hear the spirits howling and screeching in anger, but the priest's words were powerful and they could feel the spirits weakening. The group could feel the tension rising as the exorcism reached its climax. The spirits were putting up a fierce fight, but the priest's words were more powerful. Suddenly, there was a loud bang and the spirits were gone. The house was silent, and the group knew that the spirits had been banished for good. The group was relieved that the spirits were gone, but they knew that they had been forever changed by the experience. They could never forget the horrors that they had witnessed in that house, and they knew that the memory would haunt them for the rest of their lives. But as they were leaving the house, they suddenly felt a strange pull towards the house. They tried to resist it, but they found themselves unable to leave. The house had claimed them as its own, and they were now trapped as ghosts, just like the spirits of the murdered family. They were horrified as they realized what had happened. The house had trapped them, and they were now doomed to wander the halls for eternity. They knew that they would never be able to leave, and that they would be doomed to relive the horrors of the past for all eternity. They could see the fear in each other's eyes, as they knew there was no way out. They were trapped in the house, and they were now just like the spirits they had tried to banish. The group had become ghosts as well, and they knew they would be haunting the house forever. The house stood silent once again, but this time it was not peaceful. It was filled with the screams and cries of the spirits, and it was a warning to anyone who dared to enter. It was a reminder of the terrible fate that awaits anyone who dares to disturb the spirits of the murdered family.